Right, back live with you tonight, John in Focus. The High Court in Pretoria has dismissed an application for Road Accident Fund CEO Letswalo to be jailed for outstanding payments by the scheme. The applicants say over 2 million rand in interest is outstanding and proposed coercive imprisonment. Letsoalo joins us now in studio for more on the status of the fund. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Yeah, you've been owing me this chat for a couple of months now. But anyway, let's get into it. The courts seem to have said, look, the applicants are failing to appreciate the complex environment in which the fund operates. You are a conduit. Right? There's legislative and there's executive that work with you, right? And so you definitely cannot be the only one that is coming in to take the fall. That is not to say you are not supposed to pay people, because that in itself is an injustice. So let's start here firstly. Failure for the RAF to make payments for judgment debts, is it deliberate? Is it contemptuous? Is there something that is going on there that is leading to that?
Well, the court has said it's not. I mean, it is not. Factually, the RAF does not have enough funds to pay its short-term debts. So we have been saying this. I mean, the rationale of us having to go to court to ask for a reprieve to pay our judgment debts in 180 days. If you look at that application, it will tell you that the reality is that what we found at the RAF is not something we created, by the way. At the time when we arrived at the RAF, the short-term debt of the RAF was 19 billion rands. We are sitting at 8.4 now. We've reduced it over the period. So our aim has always been to pay our claimants. It would never be that we will not pay claimants. Of course, others will try to create a crisis situation. It's something that they know.
Yeah. So the view of the court is that at the date of the attempt of execution, your bank account was at zero.
Yeah.
There was no money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying you're doing okay.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
How?
What do you mean? If someone tried to execute
part of your obligation, right? Number one is that you are obliged by legislation to make payment to the claimants, irrespective of your ability to do so or not.
Absolutely. Section 21(2) of the RAF Act says in cases where the Road Accident Fund can't pay, the claimant must go to the wrongdoer. That's a fact. It's not something that we created ourselves. So there was an expectation that at some point RAF will not be in a position to pay. The fact remains is that this fund has at least been without money since 1981. So we know that. This fund started in I don't know if you read the judgment. Since 1942, 1946, the fund opens its door. In 1950, it was bankrupt, and there was interventions. In 1986, this thing changes into a social benefit fund, and it is still not funded enough at that point. So there is no point at which, during its 8-year history, this fund actually was within, even in private hands, by the way. Until 1986, this was run by private sector, and it was still not sustainable. So we know that, and this is why we are bringing the new bill. That bill is meant to make sure that this thing is sustainable.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, because there was also a commission that gave its report to Parliament in 2003 that seems to have made its way into the papers in court, and those recommendations are not yet in place. But you'll tell me your views about that. But then explain to me, right? You've got a fund Antwerpen, you've got Scholes JC. They are saying they are owed at least together, from what I'm seeing here. One is 11.1 million, another is 1.8 million. How does it get there from just a mere interest of 1.6 at the time, and another one, I think it was at 400K?
How does it get to what level?
To 11.1 million and 1.8 million.
There could not have been. I mean, the reality is that you can't even get more interest than the principal amount itself in judgment debts in any event. So that can't be the case. But we have paid them all that. My understanding was that the outstanding amount was interest that they wanted to be paid. And that interest had to be calculated somehow. there were issues around dispute about the calculation of the interest, and that's why they were not paid. And of course, when they did that, they then went to court. The aim was to say, let's incarcerate. So they wanted us to pay interest, which in our view was not calculated properly. Yeah. So there was a dispute about the actual amount of interest, and that's why it was not paid.
So it's now being cleared by the courts what amount of interest you're supposed to pay?
No, the court would not do that because that's not what they were asking for. They were not asking for clearance in terms of how much needs to be paid. They were saying they were not paid, and therefore I must be imprisoned.
And how are you going to settle that issue of that interest that needs to be paid?
Of course,
because you admit that part was paid and there's amounts that are outstanding.
We must agree on that interest. And my view with my guys was that always pay what we agree to. If we say that it's 400, a person comes and says 2 million and you say it's 400,000, at least pay the 400,000. Then we can then deal with the dispute amount. That's what we said we must do.
So now you're saying you've paid them what you thought is what they are owed, and now it's the disputed amount that is a bone of contention. What we are dealing with here, the commission report would say you are dealing with a situation where you are having liabilities that are more than the amounts that you are able to bring in via the fuel levy.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you solve it?
But you must remember, that's why you say, but your bank accounts were empty. There is a thing called an asset liability profile mismatch. Let me explain how it happens. So if you are to pay your money, our liabilities are in lump sums. So if today you are injured, you say Mr. Mdluli is injured today or local, God forbid, we need to pay you money. You want 11 million. You are going to get that 11 million upfront, which is loss of earnings. Maybe, let's just say the guy is 40 until 65. We take the whole amount that we will pay until 65. We discount it back to today and pay you that whole amount, 11 million. When we receive our money, we are receiving it monthly. When you pay the fuel levy, we receive this money from SARS monthly. So that asset liability mismatch. So you are paying money in big lump sums when you are getting. That's why we have been insisting that in terms of the bill, we should be paying in annuity, in line with, just to make sure that your liability and asset, the profile is matched in that. So we must be able to also pay monthly. That will help save the issue of the liquidity that RAF finds itself in. So it's not because RAF does not have the money, but the RAF gets its money only on a monthly basis when it's actually paying people in big chunks of money. So there would always be that liquidity mismatch, and therefore there's a cash issue and the cash squeeze on the resources of the RAF.
Is that why you would find a situation where others are saying you want to, at a given time, reduce the number of claims that you're paying, or at least delay them, not reduce them, delay them for the time being?
Yes, we delayed for 180 days.
Yeah, and then pay them.
Yes, we delay for 180 days.
In other instances, maybe more.
No, we wouldn't. Let me explain why in other instances you are finding that people are not paid at the road accident fund. We have got a payment structure. So once there is a court order, there is a payment requirement. For instance, we need to confirm that the person that we are paying is still alive, for instance, proof of life. Yeah. Some of them are foreigners. We don't know whether they are still alive or not, because if you are a South African, we'd actually just go to our to Home Affairs to confirm the proof of life. We don't get that. We ask the lawyer that gives us a proof of life. They refuse to give us a proof of life. Some of the things are including the part that says, were you in the country when this happened, right? At that point, the people can't prove that they were in the country at that point. And that needs, it's money that belongs to South Africans that we must do in terms of the PFMA. The PFMA expects us to put certain controls to make sure that we don't just pay monies out. So that's what we are doing. We are putting those controls, and people don't want to adhere to those controls, and they say, well, I've got a court order. The court order does not say that I must bring those things. But the court order can't write that. The court order says we must pay. Of course, we must pay within the control environment that we have created for payments. Otherwise, we sit with a position where you would remember that we had about 1.2 billion of duplicate payments that we had to get from people that we were paying while they were already paid. So those are the things that we are putting in space to make sure that. But we have always said that this interventions that we are having, the first strategy is to reposition the RAF. It's an interim measure. It can never be something that you can continue with for a long time to come, because over time, of course, you're going to have those problems. So when you stabilize, efficiencies can only get to a certain level. And at that point, of course, RAF will simply run out of the money and not be able to pay because in its own it's not sustainable. Why is it not sustainable? The fuel levy has nothing to do with how much we pay out.
Yeah.
So if it was a premium, you'll just then adjust it on a risk basis that we pay more and therefore the fuel levy must be adjusted upward. We have not got an increase in the fuel levy for the past 3 years and we are still going on. Which if you took it in the past where our predecessors were, if they never got this, they would not have even been able to survive for the next 3 years as we have been able to survive.
Hence the findings or the recommendations of the commission to say your financial model currently is unsound financially and actuarially. It's unsound in that sense that this fuel levy is unable to generate more money for you. So where else are you going to be able to generate money?
Well, they've made their recommendations. They've said that let's levy on the people that, for instance, people that would get traffic tickets. They said that we must pay that, and then they said for people that probably are in taxis and all that, there would be a surcharge or things like that. They've made their own recommendations on top of that. It has not been sustainable. As I'm saying, it has not been sustainable since inception in 1942. Yeah. Today, people want to make it about Collins Letswalo and this board or this management. It has got nothing to do with that. If you look at this judgment, paragraph 76, I think, it shows the 2015 court judgment by Judge Pettelsman where he says that this is an inheritance damnosa. He says it is bound to fail. Yeah. No matter in whose hands it is, because by itself it's not sustainable. And we have been saying that, which is why we insist that this RAF bill must be passed so that our people can be equitably compensated and be able to get their money when they need that money. There is no joy in someone who has lost a breadwinner to be told that you are going to get your money in the next 2 years when they've lost a breadwinner now. We want to intervene quickly and as soon as possible, like any other social benefit scheme would do.
So tell me what your thinking is, because yes, the court judgment lists what you're saying. It's underfunded and has been historically underfunded, presently unsustainable, which is what you've said. But it's the first bit that throws me. It says it's interim in nature. What does that mean? The scheme itself.
It is interim in nature because in 2008, there is these interventions that are made. Then there is this thing called RAP's Road Accident Benefit Scheme,
right,
which coincidentally went to Parliament and then it was not approved. Yeah. So this is where the interim in nature comes, because at the time when the Constitutional Court ruled on certain provisions of the changes in 2008, they were told that this is an interim nature. So it is interim nature, which is in transition to actually transit from what it is as unsustainable to a sustainable one. The one that is based on delict on the one that is based on actually being a social benefit scheme, that who sues the state to get their social benefits. Yeah. That's how this thing is coined. You must sue RAF to get the money. That's why you need to put your claim and later on you issue summons. Because in fact, you are actually suing the state. If the state does not actually pay you, you then go to court and you say this. And in fact, Section 19C says that you must use a lawyer. You cannot use any other person to sue anyway. It must actually be in court. So the litigious nature of this thing is creating that problem.
Right, back live with you tonight in conversation with the Road Accident Fund CEO, Collins Letswalo. The High Court recently finding that the CEO cannot be coercively imprisoned because of the complex, broader social security environment in which RAF actually functions in. Also finding it strange that the Minister of Transport was actually not cited by the applicants in this particular matter. However, the court held that the right to access to a social security insurance fund is certainly a right intrinsic in our constitution, but the fund also needs to be financially viable, which has a compensation scheme that is fair, equitable, and sustainable. Where the legislature as well as the executive are cooperating. That's what we want to come into now. The suggestion is have a road accident benefit scheme. Firstly, before we get there, let's address this issue of the board that has an absence of management and financial expertise.
Well, that was then. That was before 2008. If you look at, I think it's Section 11, of the Act, it will tell you what qualifications are required there. We have got chartered accountants, we have got actuaries, we have got doctors there, we've got a lot of other people, investment professionals, we have got auditors, we have got a lot of other people. This board is very sound.
Is very sound? Is it insulated from political interference?
Well, I don't know what political interference it would be.
Well, the commission would have found that the board was open to political pressure at the time.
Well, every SOE is open to political pressure. I mean, SOEs are owned by the state. So anyone who knows the shareholding model of SOEs would tell you that that is the case that everyone is grappling with. It's not as if it's a South African phenomenon or a RAF phenomenon, I mean, a phenomenon of everywhere, because the reality is that it is in the political space.
Yeah. And are you able then, via something set up as a scheme, to be able to then function independently?
Well, yes, to the extent that people adhere to the issue of oversight and where it remains operational. We are having that. I don't think that there is a part where we believe that there is interference by politicians at any point. Yeah. There is no interference as we speak now. I can assure you that we run the RAF as management. We are allowed the space to be able to do the board is also allowed to do its own work. We are doing that work.
Financial Services Board as oversight, are you satisfied with that work that they're doing? But two, also reporting to the Ministry of Transport, where the recommendation is that report to social development.
Well, those are the views. The question is, I mean, you have got unemployment insurance fund. It's also a Department of Labor. It's a social benefit scheme. You also have the compensation commission. It reports to Department of Labor and Employment. It's also a compensation scheme. So the reality is that they wanted all those things to be consolidated into one. And I think that that's one part of what the 6th administration was working on. And I'm sure that the 7th administration, once it came in, it will take over and do what is required.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me then the benefits. You're saying how a road accident benefit scheme would make this thing a little bit more sustainable?
Well, firstly, the current scheme, we do not know how to plan. And I'll tell you why. I mean, if someone gets injured today, we don't know. I mean, if it's a amputation of the limb, we don't know how much it is. It depends how much that person was earning. It depends on a lot of other variables that you cannot actually plan for. And that is what is problematic about this. I mean, if you go to other schemes, they'll tell you that if you are amputated a limb, this is how much we're going to pay you for it. For instance, now it favors the rich. It is a social benefit scheme for the rich. And it's a very strange thing because social benefit and the social safety net must not be for people that can afford. So, for instance, if today my limb is amputated and that one of my helper is amputated, I get more money than my helper. Simply because my loss of income would be on the basis of what I earn today and what she earns. Right. And that's unfair because the contribution is still 218 cents by the person that has created that on us. Because people believe very strongly that the 218 cents is actually paid by the beneficiary. The beneficiary does not pay that. It is actually safeguarding the wrongdoer. Instead of suing the wrongdoer, you're actually suing the road accident fund, and the road accident fund then pays you. And I'm saying that for people that are poorer, the road accident fund pays them lower. The ones that are rich, it pays them higher. And this is how it is. That's why it's not equitable. And you need an equitable system. So it must be based on defined benefits, and we must know exactly how much you are going to get at the beginning so that we can actually plan for it and know how much it needs for it to be able to fund all those liabilities, as it were.
Yeah. What was the thinking when the scheme was put together to go to your retirement age and work back and calculate that sum and give you a lump sum that you now want to change?
It wanted to put you in the position you would have been in if you were not injured, right? But the problem with it is that it does not have a maximum. For instance, the loss has got a maximum, but the reality is that where you are sitting, if I sit today and I get injured, I can claim any amount that I want. For instance, if I need to get medical assistance, the medical assistance is not curtailed to a certain amount. It is how much the medical cost would be until such time that I pass on, for instance, or I retire. Okay, so that's the reality of it. It was meant to put people back in that position. Which scheme works like that? You can go to an old mutual, you can go to anyone else. Once you say this is, they will tell you how much exactly you are going to get. So that's why the defined benefit scheme is the most important part, and I think that will be sustainable going forward. And it wouldn't, of course, it will be equitable because all of us will get the same. It would not depend on how much you will get and which better lawyer you have. Because now, in this case, the people that, even in terms of your funeral benefits, for instance, you must go and bury, and we pay you what you have paid. And now, most of our people don't actually have that money to actually bury their loved ones. So that creates a problem as well. It's the most insensitive part of this social benefit scheme that we face. There are children that get injured, for instance. They need medical care. They must incur cost of that medical care and claim it back, right? That does not work very well for someone who's poor, because those people would not have the money to actually spend. So even when we give undertakings, those undertakings are on the basis of these people being able to actually pre-fund this. And as a result, most of the indigent people can't actually afford that. So that's why it is unequal. It's inequitable in that sense, and also not affordable. You can't just pay and you don't know how much you're going to pay in the future, and you can't even plan for it. So all these things that we are saying in terms of the new bill are allowing us to be able to. At the center of this as well is the issue of annuitizing what we are paying you, to be able to pay you every month as you would have got your income every month. You don't get a lump sum. No one, even in loss of support, there's no way in which a child who had support must be given all that money. Most of these children, by the way, receive that money. It's given to their guardians, and this money finish long before these children actually come of age. So that is also a problem on its own.
Do you see this particular matter going further than here, or do you think the lawyers would be okay to end it here, and you'd sort out whatever the dispute is on the interest, or they would still want to, in your view, personally, come for you at RAF?
I have been having, I don't know, probably I've had more than 500, 800 of these cases where I've been told that I'll be held in contempt. It is not for the first time. I've got, with one lawyer, I think 150 of those things where someone says we are not being paid and all that. And all these are illegal immigrants. They are all those people that, of course, we are not able to pay because the person does not want to give us all the information that we require. So we do face all these things. It won't stop here. I would be shocked if it actually stops here. I expect them to appeal it. So it's something that will continue to be in the space. The reality is that they are making it about an individual. And the judge is right. It has got nothing to do with me. Long before I was born, this thing was actually inequitable. This thing was actually unsustainable, long before I was born. So I'm not understanding why they want to make it about an individual. The reality is this: we are changing RAF for the better, and we want to change the RAF for the claimant. Lawyers who used to benefit much more, they used to take 10.6 billion of these funds each and every year. We have reduced that by 75%. Of course, lawyers are going to complain. You are going to talk about medical experts. The same Sachwell Commission finds out that they are overcharging, oversettling matters. They are claiming serious injuries where there are none. Of course, those people are going to complain. But we are not naive. We knew that when we take this path, it is going to be less a traveled path, but it's going to be a path that is going to be very difficult, but it's good for our people that we continue to do.
Collins Letswalo, appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for coming in. CEO at the Road Accident Fund there, Collins Letswalo.